This is Dr. Carroll, and today's video is about references. So first off, what is a reference? A reference is an alias, or put differently, a synonym for another object. Okay, so in general, you want to, the reason you come up with references is you want to access a variable, but you don't want to make a copy of it. Making copies have overhead, and so you want to avoid that. The little arrow here says that I'm wrapping the line, trying something different. Okay, so what's the syntax for references? Well, we have a data type, and then we have the ampersand, and here it's the reference symbol, and then we're going to have a variable name, and then we're going to assign it to a variable. So this is a referent, and here is our reference, and we know that because of the single ampersand here. This is an L value reference. Okay, let's see some examples. For example, before we can illustrate a reference, we have to have a variable of which to reference. So now if we want an integer reference, then we have an int ref, and then we assign it to a variable. Okay, so here we can treat int ref just as we would original int. Okay, some more examples. So often where you see references is in parameter lists. So let's say we had some huge object, okay, and we had some code to execute, and but we had we wanted to do better than that, and so here we have a fast method, fast in terms of low overhead, to accomplish getting the parameters to that method. So here what happens is we're going to make a copy of whatever was passed the argument here, and it's of type huge object. The name here suggests that it's just has a large footprint, a lot of memory, and so we'd be copying all of that. Here, if it's a reference, then it's an alias to it. It's a nickname to it. It's a different way to reference it. We make it const so that we know that it can't be changed, but this just takes 4 bytes. And then it's an alias back to the original, well, 4 to 8, depending on your system. It's just an alias or reference or synonym back to the original object, making it very quick and easy to for the overhead for that method. Okay, so question, is the following valid? So we can have references. Here's an L reference to a method. But so then the question is, what are we returning? Here, we're returning a constant. So we can't have a reference to it because, as I said earlier, that it's an alias or synonym for another object. Now this isn't possible with an L value reference. There is such thing as starting with C++11 with an R value reference. That has a different notation as second ampersand. But for the traditional L value reference, it's not valid. So when does a reference become invalid? So it becomes invalid when the alias goes out of scope. Then it's no longer valid. What the object that is pointing to is no longer valid, so it's no longer valid. The other option, the other time it becomes invalid, is when the memory that the alias points to is deallocated. Okay, so if we had a reference to some allocated memory and it was deleted, it's gone. Okay, so now that let's contrast the differences between references and pointers. Okay? So references cannot be uninitialized. It's impossible to reinitialize a reference. They must be initialized as soon as they're created. Along those lines, so for example, if we just said we have an integer reference here and it's k, the compiler will complain that declared as a reference but not initialized. The compiler will not let you. It is syntactically incorrect. Okay. Another difference is that references cannot be made later to reference another object. So, and the technical term here is reseated. Okay. And one way you can remember this is, how would you do that? You can't use the assignment operator equals, because then how does it know if it's referring to the reference or what it references? I said earlier, you can treat that reference just as you would the original object. So here, if we have int reference equals 5, that means the value that is in original int is now 5. That's what that means. You can treat it as an alias, a nickname for it. So if you can't reseed it because it has the assignment operator already applies to the alias variable. The third difference is that references cannot be null, whereas pointers can. Okay, that's it for today.